A bone-chilling cold, mixed with tearing pain, slammed into my body. The damp mist choked me. I couldn't breathe. A monster's foul saltwater splashed onto my neck, ice cold. Two cold figures in the mist draw near. It's Dylan. It's Mia. Dylan and his girlfriend, the ones I treated with all my heart, for a box of survival rations, didn't hesitate to push me to the monsters. The sensation of fangs piercing my skin was terrifyingly clear. As my consciousness faded, only overwhelming hatred remained. I hated myself for being weak and letting them push me around. I hated my adoptive mother Martha for years of harsh oppression, and I hated their heartlessness even more. I woke with a start. My chest heaved violently. Cold sweat soaked through my thin pajamas. The sun was shining outside. From downstairs came the noise of neighbors chatting. No thick mist, no monsters, and no heart-wrenching pain. I dazedly looked around. This was the cramped little bedroom of Martha's family. The calendar on the wall showed the 12th of October 2036. There were exactly 3 days left until the deadly disaster that swept the city and lasted months. I was reborn. The memories of my past life came flooding back. Every detail was suffocatingly clear. My adoptive mother Martha and her husband were childless for many years, so they adopted me. Later, they had their own son, Dylan. Before Dylan was born, she treated me like her own daughter, and spoiled me in every way. After Dylan was born, I became an outsider. She discarded me like a worn-out shoe. Beating and scolding became routine. All the good things were reserved for Dylan. Even a warm meal became a luxury for me. When the apocalypse system binding prompt first sounded, Martha was urging me to do laundry. Dylan jumped ahead and bound the magnification system, which he thought was better. I had no choice but to passively accept the remaining shrink system. After that, I became the family's mobile storage locker. Martha forced me to shrink my body and crawl into all sorts of narrow corners to hide supplies. And Dylan and Martha, using the magnification system, multiplied the food I had hidden into massive quantities. They monopolized all resources, and didn't care whether I lived or died. What's worse, after Mia came to join Dylan, she directly gave away the small amount of supplies I had saved by skimping and scraping, all to Mia. I was hungry but didn't dare make a sound, while they ate with Mia, savoring every bite. Until the mid-cataclysm, monsters became fiercer, supplies were extremely scarce. He and Mia planned that betrayal. They used me as bait to feed the monsters, just to trade for more supplies from the neighbors.
Right then, a cold, mechanical voice rang in my head, just like in my past life. Detected stable host soul fluctuations. The doomsday survival system is activated. Choose the magnification system or the shrink
system.
Complete your selection within 10 seconds.
My heart tightened. Just as I was about to choose, the door was suddenly kicked open. Dylan stormed in, looking pissed from just waking up. The shrink system is mine. He nearly blurted it out. He quickly locked and bound it, his voice dripping with determination. I was stunned for a moment, then I realized, Dylan had also been reborn. He probably thought my shrink system was super useful last life, could slip into cracks, stash supplies, dodge monsters, and he always stole my stuff, so this time he snatched it first. I looked at the only remaining option, the magnification system. In my mind, a chill passed through my eyes. With no other choice, I had to bind the magnification system. Almost simultaneously, I felt a faint warmth in my palm. I gripped the last half biscuit left, the dinner I'd hidden from last night. The next second, the biscuit swelled visibly, from palm-sized to hand-wide and 3 fingers thick. The rich scent of wheat filled the air. Only after binding the system did Dylan realize, and looked at the biscuit in my hand. His face fell instantly. The system beeped again, clearly saying,
Magnification system successfully bound. Current permission, only non-living objects can be magnified. Magnification fixed at 3 times. Later, accumulate upgrade points by successfully repelling monsters. After upgrading, unlock the living organism magnification permission, and also unlock the magnification multiplier adjustment function.
What really made my heart race was, the system comes with a storage space of 10,000 cubic meters. Time stands still inside, perfect for stashing supplies I'll collect later, safer than hiding anywhere else. I silently noted the upgrade rules, realizing that for now, I could only survive by magnifying non-living things. Fighting monsters and leveling up was the key to getting stronger. Dylan stormed over to me, and reached to snatch the biscuit from my hand, yelling, "Why do you get to use the magnification system? Hurry, give it all to me, both systems should be mine." He had always been like this, since we were kids, whether it was snacks, clothes, or school supplies. If it was mine, he'd grab it for himself. I sidestepped and dodged nimbly, pretending to be scared, and said weakly, "The system is already bound, can't be changed." Dylan's face went pale with rage, his eyes blazing with resentment. He raised his hand to hit me, cursing that I was deliberately going against him. I instinctively cowered, but a cold smile flickered in my eyes. In my past life, he'd hit me whenever he was slightly upset, and Martha always sided with him, calling me ungrateful. I'm keeping score. He was probably still annoyed he didn't snatch both systems, not realizing that in the apocalypse, the magnification system is far more powerful in combat than the shrink system, far stronger. Soon, Martha's shrill scolding came from downstairs, just like in my past life, always revolving around her precious son, urging me to go downstairs and do the laundry, saying Dylan's clothes needed to be worn tomorrow. She came upstairs with heavy footsteps, and as soon as she entered, she saw us at a standoff. Her eyes landed on the magnified ration bar in my hand and instantly lit up. Then she put on a stern face and scolded me, accusing me of hiding things. I lowered my eyes, pretending to be obedient, and handed over the ration bar, with a deliberately ingratiating tone, explaining that I didn't mean to. I knew too well Martha's temper. The more stubborn you are, the more she'll squeeze you. The disaster hasn't come yet, so I still need to keep up the act, and buy time to prepare quietly. Seeing me give in, Martha softened a bit, snatched the ration bar and stuffed it into Dylan's hands, then gave me another glare, before urging me to go downstairs and work. Dylan bit into the ration bar, his eyes full of resentment and unwillingness, but he didn't say anything else. He chose the shrink system himself, so no matter how dissatisfied he is, he has to accept it. I knew in my heart he was probably still scheming, once the mist disaster hits, how to force me to hand over the magnification system, just like he squeezed me in my past life. Watching the mother and son walk away, the obedience on my face instantly vanished, leaving only cold determination. In my past life, I saved up small change for years, and Martha took it all, claiming it was for Dylan's wedding fund. In this life, the secret stash hidden under my bedboards must not fall into their hands. Once the house was completely quiet, I lifted the bedboard and pulled out an old iron box from the gap. Inside was what I'd saved over the years from picking trash and odd jobs, $32,000. Not much, but enough to stock up on basic supplies before the mist disaster. I quickly grabbed paper and pen, and made a list. 5 large bottles of purified water, 8 boxes of ration bars and MREs, 3 basic water purifiers, a few heavy iron rods, tarps, lighters, masks, basic meds. These are survival essentials. Luckily, now with the magnification system, the amount of stockpiling can be greatly reduced, especially the iron rods. In the early days of the mist disaster, the monsters aren't very tough, iron rods are enough to handle them, and when magnified, they're even more powerful. More importantly, with the system space as backup, all supplies can be stored safely without worrying about Martha and Dylan finding them. I snapped off a small piece from the enlarged ration bar and put it back in the tin, hiding the rest in a secret compartment under the bed that I'd secretly dug out as a visible emergency reserve. The real stash would go into the system space after a late-night shopping trip. After all that was done, I acted like nothing happened and went downstairs to work, doing laundry, cooking, and cleaning, keeping my head down the whole time, letting Martha make snide remarks. But in my head, I was busy planning the late-night shopping trip. Night came. Martha and Dylan went to bed early. Dylan was on the phone with Mia before sleeping, his voice deliberately lowered, but still clear, saying he'd bonded with the shrink system, and told Mia that when the mist disaster came, to come straight to the house, promising he would use the shrink system to protect her. As for supplies, she could get them from me somehow. I stood at the kitchen door, my grip tightening on the glass, a cold glint in my eyes. Mia, that woman was shrewd and self-serving. She was the one who pushed Dylan to take my supplies, and betray me. This time around, I would just wait and see how long those two could keep scheming together. Once the house fell dead silent, I changed into a dark jacket, stuffed the tin and keys in my pockets, and silently climbed out over the balcony. I'd already mapped out the camera blind spots in the complex, walked along the wall to the gate, hailed a cab straight to the wholesale market on the outskirts. The supplies there were plentiful, cheaper than the supermarket, and few people at night, so less chance of running into someone I knew. The wholesale market was brightly lit, with a few vendors organizing their goods. I went to my usual grain and oil store and grocery store, placed a one-time order for everything on my list. The boss, seeing I was buying a lot, offered to help with loading. I paid the full amount, watched the boxes being loaded onto the taxi and the boss's small truck, and felt a bit of relief inside. When the car got near the neighborhood, I asked the driver to stop in a hidden spot by the roadside. The streets were empty late at night, only a few streetlights on, dim lighting. I told the driver and the mover to wait where they were, went to a secluded corner by myself, concentrated to communicate with the system, activated the storage space. Then I returned to the car, pretended to help move the supplies, but really, when no one was looking, sent the boxes one by one into the system space. The 10 cubic meters of space was enough to hold everything, and there was even some room to spare. I worked methodically, and in no time, all the purchased supplies were stored in the space, leaving only 2 boxes of normal-sized purified water, 5 boxes of masks, and 1 box of ration bars, which I loaded back into the car to bring to the neighborhood as visible emergency reserves. After handling all the supplies, I had the driver deliver the remaining supplies to the building entrance, and I carried them toward the stairwell. As I reached the entrance, I saw Dylan standing downstairs on the phone, speaking softly to Mia. "I'm too soft-hearted. With a little pressure they'll make me use the magnification system to enlarge supplies for them." He told Mia to pack up all her supplies at home tomorrow and come over when the mist disaster hits. Mia's voice came through the phone, sickly sweet, telling Dylan to watch me and not let me hide anything. Dylan laughed smugly, completely clueless I was in the stairwell shadows. I held my breath, waited for him to finish the call and go upstairs, then slowly followed. Back in my room, I stashed the emergency supplies in the hidden compartment under my bed, then lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying my past life's brutal death and my current plans, Martha's cruelty and betrayal, Dylan's selfishness and greed, Mia's greed and malice. All of it would be settled when the mist disaster hits. Next morning at dawn, Martha was already going through everything, tallying up the household supplies, and heading to the supermarket with Dylan to stock up. Even though those two were always scheming against me, they at least knew to prepare for the worst. After shrinking everything, Martha put it all into a small box, and locked it in the old wardrobe against the living room wall. That wardrobe had been there since Martha's family moved in, old wood, but still sturdy. Martha specifically chose that spot to hide the supplies, thinking it was secure. As she hid the key, Martha warned me, "This is all for Dylan. Touch a single thing and I'll deal with you." Then she told me to hand over what I bought yesterday. No hiding anything. I lowered my head and said obediently that I didn't buy anything. The cookies from yesterday were from before. I'd never dare touch the household supplies. I deliberately played timid. Martha gave a satisfied grunt. Watching Dylan sprawled on the sofa playing on his phone, looking entitled, I felt nothing. They thought they had everything under control. Thought I'd still be the same pushover from my past life, but they didn't know I'd already set my plans in motion in the system space, right under their noses. Yesterday's supplies were enough to get me through the early days of the mist disaster. With the magnification system in hand, I could fight monsters and handle their exploitation and scheming with ease. Outside, the wind picked up, a faint chill and dampness creeping into the air. The signs of the mist disaster were already showing. Martha was still nagging Dylan, telling him to stay in touch with Mia and have her bring more supplies over. Dylan, on the other hand, was obsessed with using the shrink system to impress Mia and figuring out how to squeeze supplies out of me. I walked to the window, watching the thin mist spreading in the distance, my fingertips lightly tapping the glass. The game had just begun. They owe me. Those beatings, betrayals, and thefts. In this life, I'll collect every single one with interest. I had just finished sorting through the emergency supplies in the secret compartment of my bedroom. Then, panicked shouts erupted from outside, piercing and sharp, shattering the usual morning calm. I hurried to the window, carefully peeked through the curtains, and saw the thick mist spreading at a visible speed, enveloping everything. The once clear building outlines quickly dissolved in the fog. Everything around became blurry, visibility dropped to less than 6 feet in an instant, the whole world shrouded in a chaotic gray. The morning news was still playing in the living room, but the pictures suddenly cut out, replaced by an emergency notice with harsh static, urgent and serious, repeatedly warning of unknown danger. After 3 broadcasts, the signal cut out completely, the TV screen went black, and the whole building fell into dead silence. Only distant screams, piercing through the thick mist, drifted in with a sense of despair, sending chills down my spine. The next second, Martha rushed into the living room in a panic, roughly unplugged the TV, and darted to the front door like crazy, checked the lock repeatedly, then even got tape, and sealed the door cracks tightly. As if that could shut out all the danger outside. She rushed to the old wardrobe in the living room, dragged out 2 locked cases of purified water and some cookies, carried them all into Dylan's room, and covered them with layers of blankets, afraid someone would find them. I deliberately went over, pretending to take a bottle of water for emergency. Martha immediately shoved me away viciously, her selfishness and meanness undisguised in her eyes, clearly treating those supplies as Dylan's exclusive property. I had expected her coldness, so I deliberately put on an anxious and helpless look, clutching my clothes and acting flustered, mumbling worried words, but inside I was perfectly calm, long used to this family's scheming. As I turned to go back to the bedroom, I caught a glimpse of Dylan squatting on the floor fiddling with his phone. A faint white light glowed at his fingertips, and the phone miraculously shrank down to the size of a fingernail. He carefully tucked it into his pocket. His face was full of joy and excitement, repeatedly enlarging and shrinking the phone to test it, completely unaware that this shrink system in the dangerous apocalypse had huge limitations, and was barely enough to deal with what was coming. I closed the bedroom door, and locked it right away. I took out the basic air purifier I stored in the system space, quickly plugged it in, and it started running, emitting a soft hum. Before long, it filtered the cold, damp air in the bedroom, making it fresh and dry, dispelling the oppressive feeling brought by the thick mist. I also took out the survival rations and purified water processed by the magnification system, broke off a small piece of biscuit and chewed slowly, my eyes locked on the window. In the thick mist, faint black shadows squirmed, accompanied by a slight rustling sound. No need to guess, those were mist bugs. The wailing from downstairs grew closer, mixed with the cries and curses of the neighbors, non-stop. Someone must have been unlucky enough to get bitten by a mist bug. These bugs aren't lethal, but their body fluids are highly corrosive. The bitten area quickly becomes swollen and ulcerated, and the excruciating pain is enough to drive anyone mad. From the living room came the sound of Martha's panicked stomping. She kept shouting for Dylan, wanting him to come out and stay with her. But Dylan found her annoying, so he hid in his room and wouldn't come out, only focused on studying his shrink system. I walked to the bedroom door, pressing my ear up against the door, listening for all the commotion outside. Martha's sobbing, the chaotic footsteps in the hallway, the rustling of mist bugs crawling on the walls, all these noises, all blending together, playing the overture to the apocalypse. I slowly pulled out the key hidden under my pillow, gathering mental focus at my fingertips, on high alert, ready to handle any emergency. I knew deep down, this was only the beginning. The thick mist would grow denser, the monsters would grow stronger, and Martha's scheming and exploitation was just getting started. I had to stay calm, patiently wait for the best moment to strike back, and step by step, make them pay for all the suffering I endured in my past life. The rustling of mist bugs got closer, and soon they reached the doorstep. A few bugs the size of fingernails slipped through the door crack. They were dark gray, their shells glossy with oil, and after landing on the floor, they quickly crawled across the room. They left faint trails. When Martha saw the bugs, she screamed in terror, turned and fled toward the bedroom, but in her panic she bumped into the sofa and fell, grimacing in pain, but didn't stop to nurse the hurt, and just curled up and trembled. Startled by the scream, Dylan came out of his room. Seeing the mist bugs on the floor, he instinctively tried to use the shrink system. A faint white light glowed at his fingertips, as he aimed to lock onto the bugs. But the system's lock-on for living creatures was very poor, and since he was out of practice, he failed twice. While he hesitated, a mist bug crawled onto his arm, and bit him hard. Dylan screamed in pain and thrashed his arm trying to shake it off, but the bug clung tight. He could only writhe on the floor in agony, his face contorted. I stood by and watched coldly for a few seconds, watching Martha cower in the bedroom corner, too scared to come out, and only when Dylan was writhing in agony did I step forward slowly. I picked up the key on the table, focused my mental focus and silently commanded enlarge, and the key instantly expanded to the size of a palm, its edges becoming thick and sturdy, enough to serve as a weapon for both defense and attack. I raised my hand and slammed the key onto the bug on Dylan's arm, crushing it instantly. Its black fluids splattered on the floor, emitting a faint fishy smell, nauseating. The remaining mist bugs scattered in panic, looking for places to hide. I held the enlarged key and calmly chased them down, relying on my familiarity with the room, and soon wiped out every bug that had entered. Dylan slumped to the floor, staring at the big key in my hand, his eyes full of shock and jealousy. He clearly didn't expect me to have a special ability too. Martha also poked her head out of the bedroom, staring at that key, greed practically spilling from her eyes. She looked like she wanted to snatch it and keep it for herself. I immediately withdrew my mental focus, and the key instantly returned to normal. At the same time, I pretended to gasp in panic, deliberately downplaying my ability, acting like I just got lucky. I knew very well that now wasn't the time to start a fight. Revealing my strength too soon would only make Martha's family force me to work for them, and cause more trouble. Instead of that, it's better to hide my edge, and wait and see. Just then, a knock suddenly sounded, along with Mia's tearful shouts, her voice full of fear and urgency. Martha's face darkened, clearly not wanting Mia to come in and share the supplies, but Dylan didn't care at all. He rushed over and opened the door immediately. Mia burst in, looking disheveled, her hair a mess, her sleeves torn and bitten by bugs, with several obvious red bite marks on her arms. It was clear she had run all the way here. As soon as she entered, she quickly scanned the room, her gaze lingering on Dylan for a moment, then landing on the key in my hand. A hint of calculation flickered in her eyes. She walked quickly to Dylan's side, pretending to be weak as she cried about her ordeal, but her hand secretly touched Dylan's pocket, clearly probing about the shrink system, trying to take that ability for herself. Dylan was naive, and she easily charmed him. He completely missed her real intentions, and kept comforting her, even giving her the last half of his biscuit. I silently retreated to the bedroom, closed the door, shutting out the commotion outside. Mia's arrival would surely intensify the conflict with Martha's family, which was a perfect opportunity for me. I leaned against the door, listening to what was happening outside, already scheming in my mind. Greedy people will eventually scheme against each other out of greed. I just need to wait patiently, watch them fall into chaos, and then strike at the perfect moment. The thick mist lasted a whole day, and supplies in the community were running low, especially purified water, which had almost become currency. Some people were even willing to trade precious medicine for half a bottle. Fights and arguments could be heard in the hallway from time to time, as neighbors brawled over scraps of food and water. The cruelty of the apocalypse was on full display. Martha sat in the living room, her eyes occasionally glancing toward the door, with an expression both anxious and greedy, clearly plotting against the neighbors. While Dylan and Mia were fooling around in the room, she quietly changed her shoes, tightened her coat, and slipped out of the house, crouching low, moving softly, scared stiff she'd get caught. Through the hidden camera I set up on the bedroom window, I could see her every move clearly. She went around to Mrs. Higgins' door, while the whole family was tidying up in the living room. She quietly pried open the door, stole 2 gallons of purified water and a pack of survival rations, quickly stuffed them into her pocket, and ran back, crouching low, so nervous she barely dared to breathe the whole time. After returning home, Martha immediately hid the stolen supplies deep in the old wardrobe in the living room, together with the supplies she had stored before. She even changed her clothes, acting as if nothing had happened. At dinner, she gave all the remaining rice to Dylan and Mia, while giving me a cold look, saying it was too dangerous outside, impossible to find any supplies, and told me to figure it out myself. I deliberately put down my chopsticks, pretending to be hurt and helpless, and brought up the purified water in her wardrobe, watching her panicked expression, and snickered to myself. Martha's eyes flickered in panic, and she immediately snapped at me, saying I was delirious from hunger, hallucinating, her tone agitated, which made her look even guiltier. Dylan and Mia just kept their heads down, eating, completely indifferent to our argument, as if whether I was hungry, whether I had supplies, had nothing to do with them. I stopped arguing. I just lowered my head, pretending to cave, but I already had a plan. Late at night, once everyone was asleep, I slipped out of the house. The hallway was dead quiet. Just a few apartments had their lights on, muffled sighs drifted through, full of despair. I took my time walking downstairs, and bumped into some neighbors desperate for supplies. I happened to mention, like it was an accident, that we might have some extra purified water, but my mom had stashed it away and wouldn't let me near it. The second I said that, their eyes lit up. One older man immediately pressed me for details, saying his kids were dying of thirst. I shook my head, acting scared, saying I didn't know where it was, then hurried upstairs, leaving them all anxious. Soon after I got back, there was a frantic knock at the door, neighbors shouting, demanding Martha hand over the water. Martha was jolted awake, opened the door annoyed, and found a crowd of angry neighbors at her door. Her face went pale, panic flooding her eyes. She frantically denied hiding any water, argued till she was red-faced, her voice agitated but unconvincing. In the chaos, I slipped over to the wardrobe, acting like a neighbor shoved me, and used the momentum to knock the door open. 2 barrels of purified water rolled out, the exact ones Martha had stolen. The neighbors went ballistic, calling Martha selfish, not only a thief but a hoarder. They swarmed, grabbed the supplies, and cursed Martha out, letting out all their anger. Martha was livid and panicked. Her eyes locked on me, full of poison, but she had no proof to pin it on me, so she just watched helplessly as the neighbors left. She wanted to come at me, but seeing the neighbors still riled up, she didn't dare. She just shot me a lethal glare, then stormed back to her room. I hung my head, a faint sneer tugged at my lips. This was just the interest. What she owes me, there's still more, and I'll make her pay it back, bit by bit. The mist bugs slowly faded into the thick mist, and the neighborhood went quiet for now, but the supply shortage got even worse. Many residents couldn't get purified water, so they risked drinking tap water, and ended up with diarrhea and vomiting. Every day, you could hear coughing and groaning in the hallway, and the sense of despair grew heavier. I went back to the bedroom, took out the basic air purifier from the system space, and magnified it 3 times using the magnification system. This thing can not only purify air, but also filter wastewater, turning it into drinkable purified water. It was one of the key supplies I'd prepped. I took out a bucket of wastewater I had stored earlier from the system space, poured it into the purifier, and as the device started running, soon clear, odorless purified water flowed out. I filled 2 large bottles, hid them in a secret compartment, and poured the rest into the magnified bucket for storage. Enough to last me a long time, self-sufficient, no problem. Meanwhile, Mia had Dylan's shrink system all figured out. At noon that day, Mia pulled Dylan aside, acting all sweet and caring, and coaxed him into shrinking and hiding the remaining survival rations. She said it was to prevent neighbors from stealing them, and even offered to keep them herself, promising they'd be absolutely safe. Dylan was never one to speak up. Mia's sweet talk easily swayed him, so he agreed right away. He took out the remaining 3 packs of survival rations, activated the shrink system, shrank them to the size of a fingernail, and handed them to Mia. Mia carefully took them and put them in her backpack, but while Dylan wasn't looking, she secretly hid 1 pack in her pocket, a greedy glint flashing in her eyes, clearly planning to keep it for herself. I saw this whole scene clearly through the hidden camera in the bedroom. I leaned against the headboard, watching them pretend to be affectionate in the living room, feeling no emotion. Dylan probably still thinks Mia truly cares for him, seeing her as his support in the apocalypse, but has no idea he's already been used as a tool. Once his shrink system is useless, or can't satisfy Mia's greed anymore, she'll dump him without a second thought. I know that better than anyone. That afternoon, greedy Gary spotted Dylan hiding supplies using the shrink system and showed up at the house with 2 neighbors. Gary crossed his arms, looking fierce, intimidating, clearly there to strong-arm him. He forced Dylan to shrink half a box of survival rations for him, threatening that if he didn't comply, he'd tell everyone that Dylan was hiding supplies and let them all come loot. Dylan was naturally timid and weak. After Gary shoved him hard, he went pale with fear, too scared to refuse. Mia just stood there. Not only did she not help, but she sidled up to Gary and whispered that Dylan could shrink even bigger stuff, urging him to bring more supplies, even offering to help convince Dylan, clearly looking to cash in, completely throwing Dylan under the bus. Dylan saw Mia's cold eyes, and then Gary and the others' fierce looks, and had no choice but to give in. He crouched down, activating the system over and over, shrinking each item Gary brought, his face numb, full of resentment. Gary and the others eyed the shrunken supplies, stuffed them into their pockets, satisfied, then turned and walked off, totally ignoring Dylan's feelings, never keeping any of their promises. Dylan slumped to the ground, his eyes full of helplessness and confusion, as if all his strength had been drained away overnight. Martha came back from outside, and when she saw this, she not only had no sympathy, but instead railed at Dylan, calling him useless, for not even being able to protect his own stuff, and for being forced to do others' bidding, her voice dripping with contempt. Dylan hung his head, and stayed silent, with a flash of despair in his eyes. Maybe it was the first time he felt the cruelty of the apocalypse and the coldness of everyone around him. Maybe it was the first time he felt the cruelty of the apocalypse and the indifference of everyone around him. I quietly shut off the camera, and got up to sort out my own supplies, knowing that getting used by others and getting blamed by his own family was just the beginning of what he had coming. In my past life, he and Martha used me like a tool to be exploited, took everything I had, and to save their own skins, they threw me to the monsters. This time around, I'll make him feel every bit of the pain I went through, let him know what it's like to be abandoned and double-crossed. That afternoon, the thick mist suddenly thickened, denser than ever before, with visibility down to less than 2 feet, and the cold, damp air grew heavier, making even breathing feel biting cold, as if it could freeze your bones. Just then, a sharp, eerie roar echoed across the neighborhood, followed by the loud crash of a railing being smashed. My heart skipped a beat. I knew something worse was coming. A mist bear, a mid-level monster. I raced to the window. Through the thick mist, I could barely make out a monster the size of a large dog, its body shrouded in thick gray mist, its limbs strong and powerful, its claws and teeth sharp, gleaming coldly. It was madly charging the residential building, its tough hide able to withstand normal attacks, and with its immense strength, one swipe shattered the guardrail downstairs, making the metal screech loudly. Neighbors screamed in terror, slamming their windows shut, clenching their fists, too scared to show their faces. In the living room, Martha clutched Dylan, trembling. Shaking with fear, she cursed the monster under her breath, but there was nothing she could do, except endure the terror. Mia was crouched behind the sofa, sweating bullets, begging Dylan to use the shrink system on the monster, her voice desperate, as if Dylan alone could take down the mist bear. Dylan was drenched in sweat, frantically activating the shrink system over and over, trying to shrink the mist bear. But the system barely worked on living monsters, only making the bear a bit smaller for a moment, before it snapped back to normal. Instead, the constant interference only enraged the mist bear, making it roar and charge our building. The door thudded loudly, vibrations shaking the walls, as if it would burst open any second. Then suddenly, the mist bear smashed into the stairwell, drawn by the faint scent of supplies, heading straight for Martha's living room. Its massive paw slammed into the old wardrobe hiding the supplies, and the wooden wardrobe, already worn, couldn't take the mist bear's strength. With a loud crack, the wardrobe shattered, wood splintering everywhere, and the few supplies Martha had hidden inside spilled out, barely visible in the thick mist. When the wardrobe was destroyed, Martha let out an anguished scream, but she just cowered, frozen. Despair filled the entire hallway. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat and ran downstairs. Martha shouted after me, her voice panicked, probably wanting me to stay and fight the monster, to buy them time to escape. I didn't look back. I kept walking, heading straight downstairs. I needed to personally drive off the mist bear, both to protect myself and to establish a deterrent. I grabbed a heavy iron rod from the system space, used my mental focus, and willed it to enlarge. The rod instantly expanded to the thickness of an arm and over 6 feet long. Its weight increased accordingly. It felt heavy in my hand, full of power. I slung the rod over my shoulder and dashed to the building entrance, just as the mist bears sniffed the scattered supplies, looking fierce, as if ready to destroy everything. I took a deep breath. I steadied myself, gripped the rod tightly, and while the bear was busy with the supplies, I swung hard at its back. A heavy thud echoed, as the rod slammed into the mist bear. The bear cried out in pain, roaring, a piercing screech, and turned to lunge at me, its claws and fangs reeking of blood, a terrifying sight. I dodged sideways, avoiding its attack, and as it turned, I swung the rod again, smashing its leg. The mist bear's leg buckled, and it let out a blood-curdling roar. Clearly injured, and no longer willing to fight, it turned and disappeared into the thick mist, vanishing completely. Neighbors poked their heads out of windows, and saw the large iron rod in my hand. Then they looked toward where the mist bear had fled. Their eyes were full of surprise and gratitude. Someone opened their window, shouting thanks at me, while others kept praising my bravery, their tone full of admiration. I let go of my mental focus, and the rod instantly returned to its original size. I put it back in the system space, and silently went back upstairs. This fight wasn't just about self-preservation, but to earn the neighbors' trust. In the apocalypse, going solo never lasts. Gaining others' recognition sets me up for tougher monsters ahead and taking on Martha's family. At that moment, the system chimed.
Congratulations, host, for defeating the ultimate monster, the Mist Bear. You've unlocked the Living Organism Magnification Permission and the Magnification Multiplier Adjustment.
Hearing the system's notification, I was ecstatic. I knew tougher monsters were coming, but this new ability will boost my odds. Back home, Martha was on her knees picking up pieces of the broken wardrobe, looking at the scattered supplies, crying over her lost supplies. Dylan and Mia were still shaken. They looked at me, their eyes full of mixed emotions, surprise, jealousy, and a hint of fear they tried to hide. I ignored them, went straight to my room, and closed the door. I knew this battle was just the beginning, and more dangerous challenges lay ahead. After we fought off Wu Xiong, the neighbors came by to thank me. Some brought just half a biscuit, some brought packs of cold medicine, others brought simple tools, all hoping to trade for some of my purified water. I picked and chose who to help, trading a bit of purified water for meds and basic tools, restocking my supplies, and building better ties with the neighbors. Martha sat in the living room, watching the neighbors treat me with respect and eyeing my supplies with envy, her face getting darker and darker. She probably figured that my supplies should belong to Martha's family, and since I'm just an outsider, why should I get the neighbors' approval and respect? Why should I have all this stuff? Jealousy crept through her heart like vines, making her unable to sit still. Once the neighbors left, while I was sorting the traded goods in the kitchen, Martha snuck into my bedroom and started rifling through everything. She figured I'd stashed supplies in the bedroom and wanted to swipe them for herself. Through the hidden camera in the bedroom, I could see every single move she made. She went through my closet, drawers, even under the bed, finding barely any supplies, but accidentally found the shrunken survival rations that Mia had hidden under the bed. Martha picked up the rations, and seeing the leftover white glow from the shrink system on them, she instantly blew her top. She was dead sure this was Mia's hidden stash, which explained why the food at home was disappearing. Rations in hand, she stormed into the living room, screaming at Mia, accusing her of hiding supplies, and being selfish. Mia's face dropped. She immediately argued that Dylan told her to hide them, and that she wasn't hoarding them. Seeing this, Dylan immediately stepped in front of Mia, and told Martha that he did ask Mia to hide them, telling Martha not to blame Mia. Seeing Dylan defend Mia, Martha got even angrier, cursing at the two of them, accusing them of siding with outsiders, caring only about themselves, hoarding supplies, her voice intense, spittle flying everywhere. They were going at it, and the house was a mess. Martha grew more furious, losing her temper, and turned her anger on me, thinking I was driving a wedge between them, causing the rift between mother and son. She stormed into the kitchen, grabbed my arm, trying to snatch the purifier from my hand, accusing me of hiding supplies. I was ready, immediately shoved her hand away, grabbed the bucket next to me, and used my mental focus to enlarge it, making the bucket instantly swell to half a person's height, slamming down at Martha's feet with a thud, and splashing water all over her, which sobered her up a bit, causing her to stumble back in fright, pale-faced, with terror in her eyes. I gave her a cold look, my voice icy, with undeniable authority, making her think twice about provoking me. Martha saw the look in my eyes, then looked at the big bucket on the floor, clearly intimidated, and didn't dare come closer. She gritted her teeth, her eyes full of resentment and hatred, but could only slink away. Mia and Dylan stopped arguing, looking at me with a hint of fear, no longer daring to ignore me like before. I turned around and continued organizing supplies, with a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. The infighting in Martha's family had just begun, as greed and selfishness are like poison, slowly eroding their relationship, making them suspicious of each other, and fighting each other. I want to see how long they can keep arguing and how far they'll scheme against each other. Once they've completely worn each other out, that's when I'll settle old scores. Gary found out Dylan could shrink stuff, so he teamed up with two other greedy neighbors, and came back to Martha's family again. This time they brought more supplies, like stolen medicine and purified water, plus some valuable jewelry, clearly wanting Dylan to shrink and hide it all, to avoid getting caught by the other neighbors, and also wanting to use Martha's place to stash the goods for extra safety. Dylan saw their fierce looks, remembering how they forced him last time, and shook with fear, too scared to refuse. But Mia's eyes lit up, immediately seeing a golden opportunity to profit. She quietly pulled Gary and the others aside, and whispered that Dylan could not just shrink these supplies, but bigger stuff too, like furniture and appliances. She offered to help persuade Dylan, but only if she got a cut. She rubbed her fingers together as she spoke, her greed obvious. Gary and the others exchanged glances, and quickly agreed to give Mia 2 packs of survival rations. Mia smiled, satisfied, and turned to sweet-talk Dylan, saying that if he helped Gary and the others, they'd protect us, and share supplies with us later, so we could survive the mist disaster. Her tone was soft, full of persuasion, as if she really cared about Dylan. Dylan was weak-willed anyway, and couldn't resist Mia's coaxing, also afraid Gary might get violent, so he had to cave. He crouched down, activating the system over and over, shrinking each of Gary's supplies one by one, then carefully hiding them under his bed. Martha stood by, watching the pile of supplies get shrunk and hidden, a greedy gleam in her eyes. She stepped forward, and demanded half the supplies as a storage fee, threatening she'd tell everyone that they were stashing them there, threatening Gary and the others. Gary's face darkened, and he glared at Martha, snapping back that she should be glad they were even letting her hide their supplies, yet she dared to ask for storage fees. He even threatened to spill the beans about Martha stealing from the neighbors, so she'd have no place left in the community. Martha was stunned speechless, her face going red and pale, and panicking that Gary might actually spill. She could only grit her teeth and shut up, not daring to bring up storage fees again, but still staring at the shrunk supplies, her eyes full of resentment. They bickered endlessly over the split. Their voices grew louder, trading accusations and threats. The scene was complete chaos. Gary's ruthlessness, Mia's greed, Dylan's cowardice, Martha's scheming, were like an absurd farce, equal parts ridiculous and pitiful. I hid in the bedroom, watching it all clearly through the camera, and took out the voice recorder I prepared earlier to record their argument, as these recordings would be evidence against them later. The people in this house were sinister. If they tried to frame me, or steal my supplies, these recordings would come in handy, to make them reap what they sow. I leaned against the headboard, listening to the fighting outside, completely unmoved, knowing their scheming would only lead to their doom. After a heated argument, Gary and the others finally got impatient and agreed to give Martha half a pack of survival rations, and that was the end of that. After Gary and the others left, Martha took the half-pack of survival rations, and scolded Dylan and Mia, accusing them of being useless for failing to get any benefits and making her suffer grievances. Mia was unconvinced and retorted immediately, and the two started arguing again. Dylan was caught in the middle, torn, and could only keep trying to break up the fight, but no one listened to him. I shut off the camera, the smile on my face widening. This farce was far from over. Though the mist bears had been driven out, the community's supplies had been severely depleted by the earlier chaos, with hardly any purified water or survival rations left. The suspicion and looting among neighbors grew more intense, as many people took advantage of the thick mist to pry open neighbors' doors and steal supplies, and every day in the hallway you could hear arguments, fighting, and desperate crying, fully exposing the ugliness of human nature in the apocalypse. I reinforced my defenses, using the magnification system to enlarge a water barrel to the height of a person, and filling it with purified water, while also reinforcing the bedroom door, placing a magnified iron rod behind it as a defense to prevent anyone from breaking in suddenly. Meanwhile, I took inventory of the system again, organizing the supplies in the space neatly, wrapping unusual supplies in tarps to ensure safe storage, and checking the remaining space to leave room for future restocking. Seeing me living steadily with ample supplies, Martha became increasingly jealous, unable to stand her own miserable situation or bear me having all the resources. So she secretly found a few equally greedy neighbors, huddling together to whisper and deliberately sow discord, saying I was hoarding supplies and refusing to share, and that I was using the magnification system to monopolize the community's resources, trying to incite everyone to rob my supplies and take what I had for themselves. I learned about her plan through the camera, and I felt nothing at all. In my previous life, she loved using this kind of divisive tactic, sacrificing me for her own gain. In this life, I will never let her succeed. I deliberately placed a small amount of purified water in a visible spot by the door, and when neighbors passed by, I pretended to accidentally knock it over, letting the water spill across the doorway, intentionally giving the false impression that I had supplies to bait Martha. Before long, Martha showed up with the neighbors she had stirred up. The moment she stepped in, she pointed right at my nose, furiously accusing me of hiding supplies and refusing to share, her voice heated as she tried to stir up the other neighbors, to get them all to gang up on me. The other neighbors looked furious too, their eyes locked on me, as if I were truly the selfish one hoarding all the supplies. I put on a hurt, helpless look, pointing at the water on the floor and saying this was all I had left, that I'd accidentally knocked it over, and honestly had no extra supplies. My tone was sincere and my expression panicked, making me seem completely defenseless, which successfully won the neighbors' sympathy. Just then, one neighbor suddenly spoke up, saying they'd seen Martha sneak the half bottle of purified water from my doorstep, exposing her little trick. Everyone instantly turned to Martha. Martha's face showed panic as she instinctively covered her pocket, her eyes darting away, looking really guilty. The neighbors immediately stepped forward, and pulled the half bottle of purified water out of her pocket. The truth was out, and the neighbors erupted in anger. They all accused Martha of being greedy herself. She was trying to frame someone else and turn them against each other. Their voices were full of disappointment and fury. After cursing Martha out, they all turned and left, no longer willing to believe a word she said. Martha stood there isolated, her eyes fixed on me, full of venom, but helpless. Dylan stayed hidden in his room, too scared to come out, probably too embarrassed, and afraid the neighbors would turn on him too. I lowered my head, silently cleaning up the water on the floor, feeling absolutely nothing inside. Martha's constant scheming only isolates her more and more, making everyone hate her even more. This is exactly what I wanted. Once she's lost all trust from the neighbors and lost all support, I'll slowly settle the score with her, making her pay for everything she did in the past life. After being accused by the neighbors, Martha didn't back down. Instead, she went totally off the rails. She couldn't stomach me living in peace, couldn't accept how far she'd fallen. Blinded by greed and bitterness, she secretly teamed up with Gary and his cronies, hatching a vicious plan, during the monster chaos late at night, to steal the supplies I'd stashed in the underground garage. Little did she know I had the system space, figuring I still stashed supplies in the garage like in my past life. That was the biggest hole in her plan. To pull it off, when I wasn't looking, she snuck a copy of my bedroom key, and tracked my daily routine, making sure I'd be dead asleep at night. She and Gary agreed that at 2 a.m., Gary and his crew would keep me busy upstairs, while she hauled the supplies from the garage, a clean split of work. She thought her plan was watertight. But she didn't know that the hidden camera in my bedroom caught every bit of it, every single move, every whispered scheme, was all under my control. Late that night, I lay in bed, faking sleep, breathing steady, but my ears were glued to any noise outside, quietly gathering my mental focus, ready for action. Right at 2 a.m., the knock came exactly on time, along with Gary and the others faking urgent shouts, yelling that monsters got in, and for me to hurry up and open the door. I deliberately stalled for a bit, acting like I'd just been woken up, slowly got up and opened the door, my face a mix of sleepiness and panic. The moment the door opened, Gary and his crew barged in, scouting around, rummaging through everything, pretending to hunt for monsters, but really, they were trying to keep me busy, to buy Martha some time. I acted terrified and curled up in a corner, trembling a little, but I'd already fired up the system in my head, quietly waiting for the right moment. Just when they were totally focused on the search, and their attention was scattered, I quietly gathered my mental focus, and magnified the junk at the garage entrance: cardboard boxes, iron rods, glass bottles, all by a factor of 10. Instantly, the cardboard boxes swelled to the height of a person, and the iron rods and glass bottles became enormous, completely sealing the garage entrance. Not even a foot could get through, packed tight, solid as a rock. At that moment, Martha, holding the key to my room, rushed excitedly down to the garage, thinking she could easily take all my supplies, but seeing the entrance completely blocked, she froze, the excitement and smugness on her face freezing, replaced by disbelief and panic. She pushed hard on the cardboard boxes, but they didn't move an inch. No matter how hard she pushed, she couldn't budge those enlarged items. Just then, the screech of a mist bug sounded in the distance, getting closer. Clearly some lingering bug was startled, and was heading our way. Martha was scared out of her mind, not caring about the supplies anymore, turning and running, but in her panic, her foot slipped, and she fell hard on the ground. Several mist bugs crawled through the thick mist, landed on her leg, and bit her hard a few times. The intense pain made Martha scream right away. Without even wiping the dust and sweat off her face, she scrambled upstairs on hands and knees, a total mess. Gary and the others searched my room for a while, found nothing, then heard Martha's piercing scream. Realizing instantly their plan was exposed, fearing an attack by the monsters, they didn't dare stay a moment longer, scattering in all directions, terrified that one more second would cost them their lives. Martha stumbled home. The wound on her leg was already swollen and festering, cold sweat pouring from the pain, her face deathly pale, barely able to stand. She looked at me, her eyes full of venom and resentment, but she didn't dare say a word. She knew deep down that this time her scheme had backfired. She got exactly what she deserved. All the pain was self-inflicted. I looked at her coldly, without a shred of pity, and without another word. In my past life, the pain she inflicted on me was 100 times worse. This is just another payment with interest. The real reckoning is yet to come. Dylan was repeatedly forced by Gary and the others to use the shrink system. The system, which already had usage limits, became even more unstable. Combined with the excessive drain on his mental focus, it frequently experienced brief failures. After each failure, he had to collapse and rest for a long time to recover. His face grew paler by the day, and the light in his eyes was gradually replaced by exhaustion. He exuded a sickly weakness. That afternoon, Gary came to Dylan again with half a box of scarce medicine. His tone carried an undeniable pressure, demanding that he help shrink and hide it. Dylan had long been beaten and bullied into fear, and dared not resist. He could only grit his teeth and activate the system. As the white light swirled, the medicine slowly shrank. But just as it was about to reach the target size, the system suddenly failed, and the white light vanished instantly. The shrunken medicine abruptly returned to its original size, completely exposing Gary's act of hoarding supplies. Just then, a few neighbors happened to pass by, and witnessed the scene firsthand. The group, already anxious due to supply shortages, saw that Gary had dared to hoard life-saving medicine, and their anger flared up instantly. They surrounded him, demanding an explanation. Gary and his men were enraged and humiliated. Not only did they refuse to admit fault, but they took out all their anger on Dylan, believing he had deliberately sabotaged them. The group beat and kicked Dylan, striking viciously. Afterwards, they even stole the half-bag of survival rations he had left, then left cursing. Mia stood not far away, watching coldly the entire time, with no trace of pity in her eyes. She saw that Dylan had completely lost his usefulness, and fearing that Gary and the others would take it out on her, she instantly turned on him, packed her stuff, and left Martha's family without a backward glance. Then she went straight to another neighbor in the compound who had supplies, just looking out for herself. Bruised and battered, Dylan stumbled home, disheveled and beaten, and couldn't hold it together anymore. He collapsed on the sofa and broke down crying, his sobs full of grievance and despair. Martha came back from scavenging supplies, and seeing him like that, didn't offer a single word of comfort. Instead, she laid into him, her tone bitter and contemptuous, every word accusing him of being useless, spineless, couldn't even hold on to his girlfriend, and had squandered all the family's supplies. Dylan's head shot up, and looking at Martha's vicious, mean face, the grievance in his eyes slowly turned to despair. This was probably the first time he realized that the mother he had always relied on, and the girlfriend he had given his all for, would only abandon him when he needed them most, blame him, and no one would lend a helping hand. He silently wiped his tears, curled up in the corner of the sofa, and said nothing, as if all the strength had been drained from him. I stood at the bedroom door, watching everything, feeling nothing at all. In my past life, he had been just like this. When I had no way out, he had betrayed me without a second thought, pushing me into the abyss. In this life, he's just getting a taste of the same bitterness I once had. Cowardice and selfishness always come back to bite you. The fog's at its peak. Thick gray-white mist swallows the whole neighborhood, can't even see the buildings right next to us, so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. Amid this dead silence and chaos, a deafening roar cuts through the fog. With crushing, destructive force, the ultimate mistcore monster finally appears. The whole neighborhood plunges into chaos, residents are terrified out of their minds, dropping everything and fleeing upstairs. Doors are shattered, the railing screeches and snaps under the monster's impact, triggering screams. Cries and the sound of shattering objects interweave, echoing through the whole neighborhood, as despair fills every inch of the place. Martha clings to the last half box of survival rations, dragging a shaking Dylan toward the top floor, cursing this damn situation under her breath, but without a shred of courage to fight back. Dylan's face is white as a ghost, his legs are jelly, he can barely stand, and the cocky attitude he got from the system is all gone. I force myself to stay calm. The more desperate things get, the more I need to keep my cool. Right now, the only option is to build a strong barricade, to hold off the monster's attack, and buy the residents more time to prepare. I gather my mental focus and silently summon the car from the magnification system space. The iron rod and steel pipe are instantly magnified tenfold. The car becomes a massive steel barrier, the iron rod and steel pipe pile up layer by layer behind the car, forming a rock-solid temporary barricade. Each piece is precisely positioned, leaving no gap for the beast to break through. The mist core beast trudges with heavy steps, slowly approaching the residential building. Step by step, it steps into my barricade's range. It rams the magnified car hard. A heavy thud shakes the ground. The car's body is badly deformed, with a massive dent, but still holds strong, blocking its path. The beast angrily sprays corrosive mist, which lands on the car, instantly corroding large rusty patches. A pungent smell spreads, but the car doesn't cave in right away, stubbornly holding on. Neighbors upstairs poke their heads out. Through the thin mist, they see my barricade. Surprise and hope light up their eyes. Someone shouts to come help. Then, many able-bodied neighbors rush downstairs, grab whatever tools they can find, and voluntarily join the defense. I watch more and more people gather, and feel a little relieved. With just my strength alone, I can never drive this beast away. Only by joining forces is there a glimmer of hope. Martha and Dylan are still cowering upstairs, trembling, too scared to come down. In a life-or-death moment, you see people's true colors, who's a partner to fight side by side, and who's a coward hiding behind. It's crystal clear. The mist core monster keeps pounding the barricade. The enlarged car is getting more deformed. Its shell is badly pitted by the corrosive mist. It could collapse at any moment. The neighbors are desperately fighting back. Some grab stones and hurl them at the monster. Some swing iron rods at its limbs. But these attacks barely scratch it. They can't stop its rampage. The barricade is hanging by a thread. Martha hides on the rooftop. Her hidden survival rations were contaminated by the rising corrosive mist, and have gone rancid and stinking, making them totally inedible. The mother and son are huddled in a corner, watching the chaotic battle below. They're scared of the monster attacking them, and stressed about the food running out. The neighbors she had provoked see them hiding on the rooftop, refusing to join the fight, and accuse them of being selfish. Even later, when the two try to go downstairs for supplies, they get blocked at the stairway. No one wants to help them. They're completely alone and helpless. Desperate, Martha has no choice but to take Dylan, carefully edging down the stairs, step by step toward the barricade. They act humble in front of me, begging to join the barricade and get a share of supplies. Dylan also lowers his head, his eyes filled with regret and hopelessness. All his old arrogance is gone. Looking at their pathetic, begging faces, I feel no pity for them at all. In my past life, that's exactly how they behaved. When I was desperate, they not only refused to help, but also kicked me while I was down, and stole my last supplies. But now is a critical time in fighting the monster. Every extra person adds a little bit of strength. Even if they can only do odd jobs, they can still lighten the burden on the neighbors. I set clear conditions, demanding they fully participate in the defense, and that supplies be distributed based on effort. From now on, they can't exploit or scheme against me, nor stir up trouble among the neighbors. Martha, desperate to survive, nodded repeatedly in agreement, not daring to argue at all. I gave them a small amount of survival rations and purified water. Then I quickly assigned tasks, having Dylan guard the side of the barricade to focus on watching the monster's movements. If he noticed anything unusual, he was to signal immediately. Martha was in charge of passing tools and tending to the injured neighbors. The mother and son dared not slack off, obediently following orders and doing their best in their tasks. Dylan looked at the neighbors fighting hard around him, and then at me charging forward, his eyes full of guilt, probably finally realizing how ridiculous his past actions were. How selfish. Just then, the monster launched another fierce attack, and slammed hard into the already overburdened car. With a loud crash, the car completely collapsed, and a gap appeared in the barricade instantly. The neighbors backed away in fear, but no one chose to flee. Instead, they gripped their tools tightly, ready to fight to the death. I gripped the iron rod in my hand, gathered all my mental focus, and enlarged it to the maximum. The iron rod instantly became thick and heavy, enough to go head-to-head with the monster. In this battle, either we win, or we die. We have no way back. Whether Martha and Dylan survive depends on their own performance. The neighbors teamed up, quickly filling the gap with stones and leftover steel pipes. The barricade held for now. Just then, Mia suddenly showed up at Martha's door, with a phony look of guilt, and walked toward Dylan step by step. She tried to get back into this temporary safe haven. Dylan's always been soft-hearted, and with no one else to lean on, the moment he saw Mia come back, he caved. He forgave her for ditching them earlier, and even snuck some survival rations from his share and gave them to her. Martha wasn't happy, but she knew more people meant more strength, so she bit her tongue, and said nothing. Mia played nice, passing supplies around, but her eyes darted around the barricade, her gaze flickering, clearly up to something. I saw right through her. She didn't come back to fight with us. She just wanted to mooch supplies, and if things went south, she'd bolt again. To stop her from causing trouble, I had a trusted neighbor stand guard on the side of the barricade, watching her every move. Sure enough, before long, Mia used the patrol excuse. She snuck around to the barricade side. She found the neighbor who had colluded with Gary before, and whispered the barricade's weak spots. She tried to trade it for supplies. The neighbor guarding the side immediately told me, and I was livid. I immediately adjusted the barricade layout, doubling the side's defenses. I also stacked several enlarged steel pipes there, further reinforcing the barricade, completely plugging the hole. Then, I grabbed a few neighbors and found Mia, right in front of Dylan. I exposed her dirty deed of leaking the barricade and coveting supplies. Mia's face turned pale instantly, and she panicked, trying to defend herself, her eyes darting around, stammering nonsense. She looked guilty as sin. Seeing her like that and recalling how he'd been abandoned and used before, Dylan finally saw her true colors, and the last shred of affection in his heart vanished. Fighting back his anger, he ordered Mia to leave. Seeing her plot exposed, and being completely abandoned by Dylan, she could only slink off, never daring to approach the barricade again. Dylan watched her walk away, his eyes full of regret and anger, hatred for Mia, and frustration at himself for being so blind. I gently patted his shoulder. Without a word, some truths you only really understand after going through them yourself, and some people you only see for who they are after losing them completely. With Mia's internal threat dealt with, we could focus all our energy on fighting the giant beasts, and fight for our survival. Mia was forced out, and she was bitter. Instead of reflecting on her mistakes, she started plotting revenge. She hid in the thick mist, and while the giant beast rammed the barricade causing chaos, she secretly picked up a stone from the ground, and swung it hard at the magnified steel pipe, the barricade's core support. She tried to destroy the barricade, and then pin it on me, so the neighbors would blame me. But I was prepared, having a neighbor keep an eye out, who immediately caught her in the act. He shouted out and exposed her. Everyone turned to look, and saw Mia hiding in a nearby bush, still clutching a stone, ready to throw again, with a vicious look on her face. The neighbors were furious at Mia's evil act, and rushed over to surround her, yelling and cursing at her. Everyone was already exhausted from the apocalypse, and they hated such backstabbing behavior. Some even said they should throw her out. Terrified they'd throw her to the beast to make an example of her, Mia was scared out of her wits, kneeling on the ground begging for mercy, crying and sniffling, but no one felt sorry for her. Taking advantage of the chaos and everyone letting their guard down, she suddenly pushed through the crowd, and fled the building without looking back, never daring to show her face around us again. With Mia out of the way, we immediately reorganized our defense strategy, trying to find the key to driving back the beast. I watched the beast's movements, staring intently at every attack it made, every burst of mist, and gradually spotted a pattern. Every time after it spewed corrosive mist, the mist core on its head was briefly exposed, its blue light dim, and its defenses significantly weakened. That's gotta be its weak spot. I immediately shared this finding with all the neighbors, and quickly came up with a plan: distract and strike. Everyone knew their role. A few neighbors took the magnified cloth strips and waved them rapidly in front of the beast, yelling, to get its attention, making it spray mist. Dylan hid in a safe area, focusing on when the mist core would be exposed, to signal the attack in time. After magnifying myself with the system, I led a few nimble neighbors who were also magnified, all wielding magnified weapons, waiting for the moment the mist core was exposed to launch a precise attack, and smash the mist core with all our might. Martha kept caring for the wounded, handing out weapons and supplies, holding the rear. Everyone pulled their weight, and we got ready for the final fight. The beast seemed to catch on, and went even crazier, roaring and attacking harder. The corrosive mist was sprayed more frequently, and each impact shook the barricade violently. The neighbors fought back with everything they had. Even when someone got hurt, they just patched up quickly, and jumped back into the fight, with no one backing down. I gripped my iron rod, eyes locked on its head, thinking, now or never. If we smash the mist core, we'll survive. The final battle plan is now in action. Several neighbors hold enlarged cloth strips, darting nimbly in front of the beast, weaving through the air. They shake them frantically, screaming at the top of their lungs, deliberately taunting the raging monster. The beast is thoroughly enraged, roaring, charging straight at the cloth strips, opening its jaws to spray a cloud of corrosive mist, completely engulfing the area ahead. Martha's still terrified, her body shaking uncontrollably, but she finds the courage and joins the neighbors in shouting, trying to disorient the beast, to create an opportunity for us. As planned, Dylan hides behind a rock near the barricade, his eyes locked on the beast's head, not daring to blink, scared to miss the moment the mist core appears. The mist gradually disperses, and the mist core on the beast's head is briefly exposed, its blue light much dimmer than before, making it the perfect moment to attack. Dylan gives the signal at once, and his shout cuts through the noise of battle. I seize this fleeting opportunity, gather all my mental focus, and enlarge the iron rod to its max size, as thick as a telephone pole, a full 5 meters long. That heavy iron rod carries everyone's hope for survival. I push off the ground, leap into the air, and with the momentum, slam the rod down onto the beast's exposed mist core. With a deafening boom, the iron rod strikes the mist core hard, ringing out with a piercing metallic clang. The impact makes my arm go numb. The beast thrashes in agony, its massive body shaking violently, as it slams into the barricade. The magnified steel pipes and rocks come crashing down, and the barricade is about to collapse again. The beast's struggle sends a powerful gust that throws me back, and I hit the ground hard, with the rubble scraping a deep gash into my arm, as blood begins to seep out. Pain shoots through me, and I nearly black out. The neighbors rush over, carefully helping me up, as someone quickly bandages my wound, while others grab tools and beat the beast's legs and body hard, desperately trying to distract it, buying me time to catch my breath. Dylan also dashes out from behind the barricade, picks up some gravel, and uses the shrink system to reduce it to fine particles, then throws them at the beast's eyes, blinding it. Wounded, the beast roars and spews another mist cloud, then turns and flees into the thick mist, clearly trying to escape, to find a place to heal. Ignoring the searing pain, I struggle to my feet, and shout for everyone to chase it, knowing we can't let it recover. Shatter the mist core while it's wounded. Otherwise, if it comes back, we won't have the strength to fight. The neighbors all nod, grip their weapons tightly, and follow me in pursuit of the fleeing beast, as a deadly chase begins. After getting wounded, the beast went even more berserk. All it wanted was to run, but we kept chasing it hard. Cornered, it turned and struck back. It moved way slower now, and the mist core on its head flickered with blue light. Clearly it was hurt bad, but its shell was still tough. We'd need another chance to shatter the mist core. I told everyone to hold steady, not to attack blindly, keep their distance, circle the beast, and wait for the mist core to show. The neighbors nodded, and quickly spread out, some threw stones, others whacked its limbs with iron rods, messing with its head, and wearing it down. Martha picked up a small iron rod, braced herself and gave the beast's leg a light whack. Not that it did any real damage, but she gave it everything. She was probably trying to make up for her past mistakes, to really be part of the group. Dylan kept watching the beast. He hid behind a magnified rock, his eyes focused and steady, no longer the coward he used to be. Then, the beast spewed corrosive mist again, and the mist core on its head was exposed. Dylan shouted a signal, his voice loud and urgent. I waved my hand, signaling 2 quick neighbors to attack with me. The 3 of us, gripping our magnified steel pipes, rushed at the beast's head, sensing the deadly threat. The beast swung its massive claws at us, the wind from its swipe strong enough to send us flying. We 3 moved in perfect sync, dodging quickly to both sides. The claws slammed into the ground, leaving a massive crater, sending rocks flying. As the beast pulled back its claws, we seized the moment, leaping up together, and smashed our steel pipes down hard on the mist core. A crisp crack rang out across the battlefield, and a clear crack appeared on the mist core, its blue light dimming instantly, nearly going out. The beast let out a piercing scream, its massive body shaking violently, its movements slowing down, and its aggression dropping sharply. The neighbors cheered at this, their morale soaring, and they attacked even more fiercely, determined to finish it off. I knew victory was close, just one more fatal blow, and this giant beast would be gone forever. I gripped my steel pipe tighter, gathered all my mental focus, and prepared for the final strike. Dylan picked up more pebbles, shrank them with the shrink system, and threw them right at the crack in the mist core, trying to make the crack bigger. Martha cheered loudly from the side, her voice full of excitement and hope. At that moment, we were no longer strangers plotting against each other, but comrades fighting together to survive. As the beast spewed thick mist again, briefly exposing the mist core, I leaped up, put all my strength into the steel pipe, aimed at the crack on the mist core, and slammed it down hard. A thunderous crash. The mist core shattered completely. The blue light vanished, shattering into countless tiny specks of light, and dissipated into the thinning thick mist. The mist core beast let out a final piercing roar, and its massive body slowly faded away, eventually merging into the thick mist, until it vanished completely. As the beast died, the thick mist gradually thinned and dispersed, the corrosive smell in the air faded away, the biting cold slowly receded, and a long-lost breath of fresh air greeted us, making the neighbors cheer and rejoice. They hugged each other, and some wept with joy, releasing all the fear and stress of the past days. Celebrating this hard-won victory, I crashed to the ground, my whole body aching and weak, and as the wound on my arm reopened, blood stained my sleeve red, but my heart felt an unprecedented relief and lightness. This thrilling battle, we won it. We survived. Neighbors gathered around, carefully helping me to my feet, as someone handed me purified water, and another used their last medicine to bandage my wounds, while words of thanks echoed in my ears. Warm and sincere. Martha stood aside, watching the heartwarming scene, her face full of guilt and envy, wanting to come closer, but too embarrassed to speak, so she silently walked over to the rubble, helping to clear scattered tools and debris, to make up for her past mistakes through actions. Dylan also actively joined the team, treating injured neighbors and moving rubble, moving quickly with a serious expression, appearing much calmer than before, no longer arrogant or selfish, like a completely changed man. Sunlight pierced through the thinning mist, shining into the neighborhood, bringing a warm light, dispelling the apocalypse's gloom. As I watched the neighbors helping each other in harmony and saw Martha and Dylan working hard to clear the rubble, so many emotions swirled inside me. The pain and hatred of my past life are behind me, and this time I not only got revenge and escaped Martha's family's exploitation and manipulation, but also gained the trust and friendship of my neighbors. The thick mist hasn't fully lifted, but we've already seen a glimmer of hope. Now all we have to do is clear the rubble, repair the houses, restore order to the neighborhood, and quietly wait for the thick mist to completely clear, until the day the sun shines bright again. The thick mist keeps lifting, the sun gets brighter and brighter, visibility's slowly coming back, and the whole community finally sees the sun again. Looking around, everything's a wreck, with crumbled walls, broken houses, rubble and tools everywhere, and remnants of the battle, all speaking to the brutality of this apocalypse. But the neighbors' faces are lit up with smiles of survival. Everyone works together, helping each other, methodically clearing the ruins and rebuilding their homes. I gather up all the remaining supplies in the community, grab some from my stash in the underground garage, and add them to the neighbors' supplies, pooling everything together. I hand them out fairly based on each household's needs, making sure everyone gets their basic survival essentials. For the injured neighbors, I prioritize medicine and purified water and arrange for someone to care for them, making sure they heal up quickly. Martha volunteers to clean and fix doors, and though she's a bit clumsy and not very skilled, she does it with extra care, not missing a single spot. She occasionally sneaks a glance at me, her eyes full of guilt and remorse, but she never dares to mention past grudges, just silently atoning through her actions. I don't start a conversation with her, nor do I bring up her past mistakes. After going through this life and death battle, the past hatred and scheming seem to matter less and less. As long as she truly repents and stops stirring up trouble and exploiting others, I can choose to forgive her and give her a fresh start. Dylan tagged along with a few neighbors who knew repairs, learning how to fix furniture and windows. He became quiet but exceptionally hardworking and grounded, no longer that spoiled, selfish kid. One time, he offered to fix my bedroom door, and when he finished, he hung his head and muttered, "Sorry," his voice full of genuine regret. I looked at him, gave a slight nod, and didn't say anything. It's never too late to make amends. The pain from my past life was deep, but I didn't want to stay chained to hatred. Things between neighbors grew incredibly harmonious, as all the past suspicion, conflict, and fighting vanished in this life or death crisis. Everyone pitched in to carry supplies and fix up the houses. Someone built a fire, cooked a pot of hot porridge, and shared it with everyone. The warm porridge went down our throats, driving away the last of the chill, and warming everyone's hearts. I stood on the balcony, watching the busy but peaceful scene in the neighborhood, feeling totally calm. The resentment from my past life is gone, and I've achieved what I set out to do in this one. I survived, broke free from Martha's family, and earned my neighbors' trust and respect. The thick mist has lifted, and a new life is about to begin. There might still be challenges ahead, but I'm no longer a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. I've got the magnification system, neighbors who fight by my side, and the courage to start over. The neighborhood finally settled down for a bit. The neighbors were grateful for what I did during the crisis. They offered me their supplies to thank me. I didn't take everything. I only picked some essential tools and medicine. I told them to keep the rest. The thick mist lifted, but no one knew what else was out there. Stocking up on supplies means more security. Martha saw the neighbors start to respect me more. She got more and more jealous. She was used to bossing me around, always making me give in to her. Now that everyone trusted me as a leader, it really stung. Jealousy took root again. She secretly approached Gary and others, trying the same old trick again, sowing discord, claiming I wanted to hoard supplies and become the neighborhood boss. She tried to turn everyone against me, but after everything that had happened, Gary and the others had seen Martha for who she really was. They knew she was always stirring up trouble, selfish and petty. They didn't buy her lies. Not only that, Gary really laid into her. He pointed out how I'd nearly died protecting them. If I really wanted to hoard supplies, I wouldn't have shared my stock with everyone. He told her to get lost, and stop wasting everyone's time. Martha got shut down, her face flushing red and white, both ashamed and furious, but she kept her mouth shut, and could only slink home, completely giving up her little schemes. Dylan read his mother's mind, and took the initiative to talk to her, advising her to let go of her scheming ways, to live right, and stop causing trouble. Though Martha was reluctant, she knew she had no chance to stir up trouble anymore, so she had to give up, and quietly join everyone in rebuilding. After this apocalypse nightmare, Dylan had a complete change of heart. He no longer relied on others and was no longer selfish, and started helping me manage supplies, reinforce doors and windows, and care for injured neighbors, making up for his past mistakes with concrete actions. I didn't refuse his help, but I always kept my distance. The hurt from before was too deep, and I couldn't just let it go, so I could only slowly move on, letting time heal everything. And Mia became a total outcast in the neighborhood. She didn't dare go near the residential buildings, could only hide in the corner of the community, living on scraps the neighbors threw away, leading a miserable life. Once, when no one was looking, she tried to sneak into a building to steal supplies, but was spotted by a patrolling neighbor, and got severely punished. After this incident, she never dared to come near the buildings again, barely hanging on in that corner. Occasionally, while clearing debris, I would catch a glimpse of her, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. This path was her own choice. Greed and betrayal come at a price, and the consequences are hers alone to bear. The morning mist still hasn't lifted, and the neighborhood still reeks of disinfectant and the stench of dead monsters. I'm helping the neighbors fix the damaged wall, but the moment I touch the cold bricks, the humidity in the air spikes. The thin mist thickens visibly, engulfing the whole neighborhood in an instant, and visibility drops to less than a meter, leaving only a white void around. What's more unsettling is that the ground begins to tremble slightly, and a low roar comes from deep within the thick mist, approaching with devastating pressure. A neighbor's scream breaks the silence, and everyone stops what they're doing instantly, gripping their weapons on guard. I look up at the thickest part of the mist as a massive silhouette slowly emerges, even larger than the previous mist core beast and as tall as a 3-story building. Its body formed of pitch-black mist and surrounded by countless low-tier monsters, mist bugs. The mist bear's silhouettes flicker in the mist, clearly being controlled by it. This is the ultimate monster, the Mist Core Mother, with a mist core larger than a fist embedded in its head glowing with an eerie purple light. Its defense clearly stronger than ordinary mist core beasts, and it also has the ability to control low-tier monsters. As the roar gets closer and closer, the Mist Core Mother steps heavily toward the residential building, making the ground tremble with each step, and wherever it passes, the half-repaired wall is instantly smashed to pieces with debris flying everywhere. Under the control of the beast, the low-tier monsters launch a full-scale attack like a tidal wave. Mist bugs swarm in groups, gnawing at the walls and doors and making piercing noises. The remaining mist bears ram the stairwell door crazily, and the thuds are dull and violent as if they'll break through any second. The temporary barricade in the neighborhood gives way instantly. Mist bugs bite many neighbors, forcing them to resist while retreating upstairs. Screams and the clang of weapons mix together, and chaos erupts again. Martha trembles with fear. She clutches Dylan's arm tightly. She can barely stand. She mutters desperate words, over and over. Dylan's face is pale, but his usual cowardice is gone. He clenches his fists, picks up some gravel from the ground, and stands ready to fight, determination in his eyes. I take a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Right now, our only chance is to use supplies to build a new barricade. I immediately turn and run to the underground garage, where I stashed weapons and supplies. I enlarge all the remaining iron rods and steel pipes in the garage to the max, and also expand a few abandoned cars, stacking them into a solid steel barrier to block the front of the building. In the panic, I touch the crystal pendant around my neck. This pendant has been with me since I can remember, made of a special material, never wearing down over the years. On instinct, I enlarge it, and to my surprise, the pendant instantly emits a soft white light, forming an invisible barrier. It not only keeps the corrosive mist out, but also interferes with the low-tier monsters, slowing their movements. I signal everyone to take cover behind the pendant's barrier. The neighbors gather toward the white light, and Martha and Dylan also run over, their faces filled with relief to be alive. Seeing this, the Mist Core Mother, enraged, roars and sprays a large area of corrosive mist that rushes toward the barrier. As the white light and mist clash violently, a sharp sizzling sound fills the air, and the barrier shakes violently, but it holds. I know in my heart, this is the ultimate battle for everyone's survival. We have to give it everything we've got if we want a chance to live. The Mist Core Mother Beast unleashed low-tier monsters in relentless waves, and mist bugs swarmed toward the white light barrier, burning to ashes the moment they touched it, turning into wisps of black smoke. Mist bears kept slamming into the barrier, dull thuds echoing constantly, but they couldn't break through the barricade. But the mother beast's corrosive mist grew stronger, and the barrier's white light began to dim, with tiny cracks appearing on its surface, ready to shatter at any moment. I quickly organized the neighbors into squads. Some swung enlarged cloth strips, driving away the approaching mist bugs, while others held enlarged iron rods, focusing on the weak spots on the mist bears' heads. Everyone had a clear role, fighting bravely. Even if someone got hurt, they'd patch up and jump right back in, and no one backed down. Dylan suddenly stepped forward, his eyes determined, signaling he'd distract the mother beast. He planned to use the shrink system to make himself tiny, sneak into the monster horde, and get close to the Mist Core Mother Beast to attack. I froze for a second, then nodded. The shrink system does little damage to living monsters, but it's perfect for stealth. I told him to be careful, and handed him an enlarged cookie for energy. Dylan activated the system, and his body shrank to the size of an ant, slipping through gaps in the ground into the low-tier monster swarm. He moved nimbly, dodging the mist bug's bites and the mist bear's stomps, inching closer to the Mist Core Mother Beast. I watched the mother beast's every move, gripping the iron rod, ready to attack with him at any second. Just as Dylan was about to reach its feet, the mother beast suddenly sensed something was off, and a purple light glowed on its head, as a thick stream of corrosive mist shot his way. My heart clenched, and I grabbed the steel pipe beside me, using my mental focus to enlarge it, and swung it hard at the incoming mist. The steel pipe instantly swelled as thick as a utility pole, shielding Dylan. The mist hit the pipe, instantly corroding it with large rust spots, and the pipe crashed down with a bang. Using that split-second buffer, Dylan barely escaped. As the mother beast shot mist, I seized the opening, leaped up, enlarging the iron rod to its max size, and slammed it hard at its mist core. With a loud thud, the iron rod smashed into the mist core, and a screeching clash echoed across the battlefield. The mother beast roared in agony, its body trembling hard, as a tiny crack appeared on its mist core, and the purple light dimmed a bit. The low-tier monsters under its control instantly fell into chaos, their attack tempo slowing noticeably. Dylan seized the chance to crawl out of the gap, then returned to normal size and signaled me to hit the crack. I rounded up the neighbors, aiming all enlarged weapons at the crack on its mist core. Martha mustered her courage, grabbed a small iron rod and swatted at the mist bugs, and though it barely hurt them, she was giving it her best. Mia was still hiding in the hallway upstairs, peeking out the window, too scared to come out, silently praying we'd win this fight. After its mist core cracked, the mother beast went totally berserk. It stopped controlling the low-tier monsters and launched a direct assault on us. It stomped heavily, swinging its giant claws, and slammed into the white light barrier. The barrier trembled violently, dimmed even more, and cracks spread across its surface. I yelled for everyone to focus our fire. Crack charged out first, magnifying the iron rod again, and slammed it into the mist core crack. The neighbors followed suit, using magnified steel pipes and rocks to hammer at the crack. Dylan grabbed broken glass, used the shrink system to turn it into sharp shards, and threw them precisely at the crack. Though his strength was limited, he managed to widen it. The mother beast roared in agony, spitting thicker and thicker corrosive mist, and many neighbors were caught in it. Their arms and faces burned, but they gritted their teeth and pushed on. No one backed down. Martha watched the fierce battle and completely set aside her fear. She handed purified water to the wounded, rushed to pass weapons, and darted through the crowd tirelessly. At that moment, all conflicts and suspicions between us disappeared, leaving only one goal: drive back the mother beast, and survive. The fight lasted over half an hour, and we were all completely wiped out. Many were panting from exhaustion, and our weapons were pretty badly damaged. But the mother beast started moving slower, and the cracks on its head had spread over most of it. The purple light was so faint it almost went out. I knew the decisive moment had come. I took a deep breath, concentrated all my mental focus, and enlarged the iron rod to the max, as thick as a bucket, and 10 meters long. While the neighbors kept the mother beast distracted, I sprang off the ground, leaped into the air, put everything into my arm, and smashed it into the mist core crack on the mother beast. A sharp crack rang out, and the mist core completely shattered, with the purple light vanishing instantly, turning into countless tiny specks of light, and scattering into the thick mist. The mist core mother beast let out one last piercing scream, as its massive body slowly faded away, and the low-tier monsters it controlled collapsed one after another, turning into wisps of black smoke that blended into the mist. The corrosive mist in the air started to lift, and the thick mist began to slowly dissipate. Sunlight pierced through the mist, shining down on us, bringing long-lost warmth. The neighbors erupted in cheers, hugging each other, as many were moved to tears. This long-lasting disaster was finally coming to an end. I fell heavily to the ground, my body aching all over, with burns from the mist on my arms and legs, but my heart felt an overwhelming relief. Dylan ran over and helped me up, his face full of excitement and guilt, expressing his apology through his actions. I met his eyes, and gave a small nod. All the old grudges, in that moment, seemed to fade with the mist, and matter less. The thick mist continues to clear, the sunlight is getting stronger, and visibility is slowly returning to normal. The community is still in shambles, with collapsed walls, damaged houses, and scattered weapons and rubble everywhere. But the neighbors are all smiling, relieved to be alive. Everyone's helping each other clear debris and tend the wounded, creating a busy and harmonious scene. Martha pitches in to help clean up, cleaning the wounds of injured neighbors, clumsy but especially earnest. But given her past misdeeds and her retreat early in the final battle, the neighbors still keep their distance from her, though they don't criticize her like before. Dylan helps a handy neighbor fix doors and windows. He's quiet now, steady and diligent, no longer the arrogant bully he used to be, and sometimes he even helps carry supplies, slowly earning back some forgiveness. Mia sees the community has calmed down and wants to cling to Dylan again, putting on a guilty face to try and patch things up, but Dylan just looks at her with cold and indifferent eyes, flat out rejecting her with a firm attitude, and no sign of softening. Mia's face goes pale, and she tries to explain herself, but his cold stare stops her, forcing her to slink away, not daring to come near again. I headed home to get supplies sorted. Still had plenty of stock in the underground garage. I gave some to neighbors who were running low, and saved the rest for emergencies. Just as I was sorting through my clothes, the crystal pendant around my neck suddenly lit up, the light getting brighter and brighter, a warm white glow wrapping around my whole body, and releasing a faint, sweet fragrance. I've had this crystal pendant for over a decade, and it's never done anything like this. Confused, I picked it up. It felt warm in my hand, and the light cast strange patterns on the ground through it. The neighbors heard the noise, and crowded around, staring at the glowing pendant, their faces filled with shock, murmuring among themselves. My confusion deepened, and I had a gut feeling something big was about to happen. The pendant kept glowing for about 10 minutes, before slowly fading back to normal. I put it back on, and just settled down. The roar of engines came from the community entrance. A few fancy cars slowly pulled in, and parked right outside. The car doors swung open, and a sharply dressed, elegant-looking couple hurried out, glancing around, with worried looks, as if looking for someone. The neighbors paused what they were doing, and eyed the couple curiously. I walked over to the window and looked out. Suddenly, a weird sense of familiarity hit me. The couple's eyes swept over the crowd, and finally settled on me. When they spotted the crystal pendant around my neck, their eyes lit up immediately. They excitedly rushed toward me. My heart suddenly started pounding, and a powerful premonition welled up inside me. Maybe this couple is connected to my past. The couple rushed up to me. The woman was wearing a custom-made elegant dress, her makeup delicate, yet she couldn't hide the excitement and exhaustion in her eyes. He stared intently at the crystal pendant around my neck, and tears immediately welled up, reaching out a trembling hand to touch me, but afraid to scare me. The man was in a suit, standing tall and straight. His eyes were red too, tightly holding the woman's hand. His eyes shone with the joy of finding me at last. The woman sobbed as she held me tightly in her arms, her tears soaking my shoulder. Her embrace was warm and soft, with a faint scent of perfume. Without thinking, I didn't push her away. The inexplicable familiarity growing stronger inside me, and the grievances and confusion of years all surged up, making my eyes well up too. The man gently patted my back, speaking to me in a hoarse voice. He said they were my biological parents. The man was Richard Sterling, and the woman was Eleanor Sterling. They had been searching for me for over a decade, and finally found me. I stood frozen, my mind completely blank. The words, biological parents, hit me like a thunderbolt. All the cruelty and exploitation I suffered in Martha's family, the grievances I had no one to tell, all erupted at this moment. I leaned into the woman's arms, and couldn't help but cry loudly. Martha and Dylan were in the crowd too. Seeing this, their faces shocked and disbelieving, mouths hanging open, unable to believe I was a wealthy heiress. Greed and regret flashed in Martha's eyes, probably regretting being so mean to me all these years, and missing her chance to latch onto a wealthy family. Dylan just stood there, his expression complicated, a mix of surprise, guilt, and confusion. Richard Sterling pulled a DNA test report from his briefcase and handed it to me. He softly explained they'd taken my hair sample a long time ago, confirming I was their daughter, Chloe. Back then, there were family conflicts. They were forced to leave newborn me with someone they trusted, but then things changed, and they lost contact with me. For all these years, they never stopped searching, until yesterday, when they picked up the signal from the crystal pendant, and finally tracked me down here. Eleanor Sterling wiped away her tears, and held my hand, looking me over carefully, her eyes filled with concern. She kept blaming herself for not protecting me, promising she'd never let me suffer again. Richard's hand felt warm and strong, giving me a huge sense of security. I looked at this excited couple in front of me, and at the DNA test report, the doubts in my heart finally clearing, as my years of wandering and suffering finally found a home at this moment. The neighbors gathered around to congratulate us, their words full of sincerity. I looked at my kind biological parents beside me, and at the neighbors blessing me, feeling my heart full of warmth. Martha tried to come over and talk, but the Sterling bodyguards stopped her, so she just stood there, looking at us with a complicated expression. I ignored him. I didn't want to bring up the grudges from all those years anymore. I just wanted to cherish the hard-won family love in front of me. Richard and Eleanor came with me to Martha's to pack my things. Right when we stepped in, Martha rushed over, with a fake smile plastered on her face, groveling to my parents, apologizing non-stop, lying that she hadn't taken good care of me. She begged for forgiveness. Eleanor's face went cold, and she yanked her hand away from Martha, her eyes blazing with anger. Right then and there, she exposed all of Martha's wrongdoings over the years, treating me like a servant, making me eat leftover scraps and cold rice, forcing me to wash clothes in freezing water in winter, letting Dylan bully me, even trying to steal my supplies in the bedroom, and pushing me toward the monsters. Richard then pulled out his phone, and played the security footage I'd saved, along with the neighbors' recorded testimonies. The footage clearly showed Martha mistreating me, stealing my supplies, and framing me, and Dylan and Mia trying to push me to the monsters. Martha's face went pale instantly, her legs gave out and she nearly collapsed, mumbling excuses, trying to brush it all off as a misunderstanding. Richard's eyes went icy, and he said flatly the evidence was solid, no room for argument. He said they'd already contacted the community and a lawyer, and the adoption would be terminated that day, and she'd be held accountable for abusing her adopted daughter. Terrified, Martha dropped to her knees and begged for mercy, crying and saying she'd been a fool, then turned and kowtowed to me, begging me to forgive her. Dylan also tried to come over and curry favor, hoping I could vouch for him to my parents, but the Sterling bodyguards stopped him. He looked at me, his eyes full of regret and pleading, mumbling his apologies. I looked at him, feeling nothing at all, for the wounds from my past life ran too deep, not something a simple sorry could fix. Just then, Mia heard the news and rushed over, and seeing the Sterling's presence, she figured she could suck up to the rich family. She immediately barged in to butter them up, lying that she always had my back. Richard gave her a cold look. He told the guards to throw her out, saying the Sterlings don't welcome bootlicking, venomous people. The guards dragged Mia out of the house. Yelling non-stop, she finally skulked away from the neighborhood, disappearing without a trace. Community workers and lawyers soon showed up with the paperwork, presenting the relevant documents, officially ending my adoption with Martha's family. The lawyers said that the evidence of Martha abusing her adopted daughter was ironclad, and she'd be held legally responsible. Dylan, for turning a blind eye to her abuse, was put on the community blacklist. He lost the neighbors' trust, making it impossible for him to stay in the neighborhood. Martha collapsed, sobbing bitterly, but no one felt sorry for her anymore. Dylan stood by, his face ashen, silently taking it all in. I watched them, feeling no joy in revenge, only the relief of total freedom. From that day on, I was done with Martha's family for good. After the adoption was dissolved, Mom and Dad accompanied me back to Martha's house to pack up my stuff. This place where I lived for over 10 years was filled with painful memories. I felt no nostalgia at all. I opened the closet, and inside were all of Martha's old, worn-out clothes. I packed all those clothes up, and sorted through the old stationery and bedding, not leaving a single thing that belonged to this place. Looking at the shabby clothes in my hands, Eleanor couldn't help but tear up again. She said, heartbroken, she'd buy me the best clothes and never let me suffer again. Richard held my hand tight, full of guilt. I shook my head and smiled to comfort them. All that hardship is over now, and having Mom and Dad here is all that matters. I carried the packed old stuff to the community recycling station, and lit a fire. The flames blazed, burning the clothes and things to ashes, and also burning away all my painful memories from Martha's family. Watching the ashes fly in the air, I took a deep breath. I felt so much lighter, completely cutting ties with this place. My parents stayed by my side the whole time, silently giving me warmth and strength, without many words, but they understood all my relief. After packing up, I took my parents to say goodbye to the neighbors who'd been kind to me. Mrs. Higgins handed me some buns she made herself, telling me to take care, and to come back and visit them often. The mister who fought monsters with me earlier smiled and wished me the best, saying good times were coming, so I took the buns, my eyes reddening, and bowed deeply to the neighbors. I thanked them for their care during this time, and promised to visit everyone later. I gave away all my remaining supplies to these kind neighbors, and left my contact info, telling them to call me if they ever needed anything. Martha hid by her doorway watching us, her eyes full of envy and regret, but she didn't dare come forward. Dylan also stood by, wanting to say something, but ultimately remained silent. I didn't even glance at them. I turned and followed my parents toward the entrance of the neighborhood. Sunlight fell on me, warm and dazzling. The neighborhood behind me grew further and further away, and those painful pasts were left behind for good. Getting into the Sterling family's luxury car, watching the scenery rushing by outside the window, I took a deep breath. From now on, I am no longer Martha's adopted daughter. I am Chloe, the Sterling family's heiress. I will leave the hardships of the past behind, and start a brand new life with my biological parents. The car drove for over an hour, and arrived at the Sterling mansion. The mansion sat halfway up the mountain, covering a vast area. The yard was filled with flowers and trees, with fountains and sculptures tastefully arranged. The decor was luxurious yet cozy, a world apart from that cramped little house at Martha's. A servant respectfully approached, and called me Miss Sterling. I felt a little out of place at first, holding Eleanor's hand tight. Eleanor showed me around the mansion, and prepared a huge bedroom for me. The wardrobe was full of custom clothes, shoes, and bags, and the vanity was covered with luxury goods and skincare. She smiled and asked about my preferences, saying I could change anything I didn't like. Seeing all this, my heart was full, but I felt a little uneasy too. After years of hardship, I'd gotten used to being frugal, so this luxury lifestyle was hard to adjust to. My parents didn't force me to adapt right away. Instead, they patiently stayed with me, showed me around, introduced me to family and friends, cooked me all kinds of delicious meals every day, hired the best tutors to help me catch up on my studies, and plan for my future. Eleanor would talk with me every day, listening to my stories from all those years. She'd tear up hearing about my past grievances. She would hold me and comfort me. Richard taught me how to manage the family business, took me to business events, and gradually built up my skills. I kept the magnification system carefully hidden, using it only in private, occasionally. Once, a servant accidentally knocked over a potted plant in the yard, and it was about to break. I secretly used the system to make the plant bigger, so it landed steadily, without anyone seeing it. I knew this system was my lifeline in the apocalypse and my biggest secret, so I couldn't just reveal it, or it would bring unnecessary trouble. As days went by, I gradually got used to being an heiress. Academically, I soared, and my grades were at the top of the class. In business, I also showed incredible talent, working under Richard Sterling on company matters, and won the respect of family and friends. I was no longer that scared, pushed around adopted daughter of Martha's. I became confident, composed, and decisive, and a long-lost smile slowly returned to my face. A year later, I had fully become part of the Sterling family. I used my allowance to start a charity organization, focused on helping kids who lost their homes or were abused in disasters. I wanted to share the warmth I felt in the apocalypse. I wanted to help more people in need. When charity work got tough, I'd use the magnification system to solve the problem, like magnifying donated supplies, to help more children, but I never said a thing. Sometimes, I'd hear about Martha and Dylan from my parents. Martha got 3 years in prison for abusing her adopted daughter, and after getting out, she barely scraped by with odd jobs, facing everyone's disdain. Dylan was shunned in the neighborhood, couldn't get a decent job, and could only get by picking trash and doing odd jobs, his arrogance long gone. Hearing all that, I felt nothing. They brought it on themselves, with no one to blame but themselves. One sunny afternoon, I sat on a bench in the Sterling garden, watching my parents stroll in the garden, their faces beaming with joy. A gentle breeze blew, carrying the fragrance of flowers and grass. I touched the crystal pendant on my neck, my heart full of peace and gratitude. The struggles of my past life had become a badge of honor, and those who had hurt me all got what they deserved. Now, I have parents who love me, a brand new life, a hidden power, and a future full of hope. Chloe's new life was just beginning.